Joining us to talk about the Neymar Football League from the owners group, owners meeting is none other than Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer. Should I brush up on my Portuguese, Albert?
I certainly need to after that press conference. I didn't understand a lot of it, but yeah, I mean, and I figured you'd appreciate the lighting in here too, Rich.
It's very moody. Very
it's delightful, right?
Moody.
I feel like it's very holiday. Got a little bit of a holiday feel. You look behind me, you can see the lights.
Look at that, festive, and I appreciate you finding a nice, quiet room to have this conversation there at the ownership meeting. So, what are you gleaning? What's the plan here for the NFL?
Well, I mean, I think the Brazil thing's interesting. They had considered 3 cities, really. It was Rio, Sao Paulo, and then Madrid in Spain. And, they certainly want to continue to expand this. And, I think this is, over the next 5 to 10 years going to grow to where they're really going to use the 17th game as an international game where, now every other year a team's got 9 home games. And teams now are going to be subject every 4 years to giving up one of those home games to go overseas. And so, clearly it's like part of the plan when they went to 17 games was to use the extra games to grow the game internationally. And I think it's like part of, they got to a point, Rich, and this, like 15 years ago or so, where it was like, we can't really grow up domestically anymore. So we want to grow out. And that's adding inventory as Thursday Night Football. It's 17 games. It's the expanded playoffs. It's going back to LA, and it's growing internationally. And so this is a big part of it. And it's a new continent too, which is significant for them. And then, as you mentioned off the top there, like the rules changes are coming up here. So I'd expect in the next couple hours we'll at least have some update on what they're going to do with the hip drop tackle with the push play. And then another thing, the split flow blocking is something else that's come up that I think fewer fans have a handle on, but another thing that they're addressing here.
Well, they usually don't make rule changes at this ownership meeting. It's usually, studied, and then the competition committee has at it during the month of February or late January when they start meeting. And then they present something for ownership to vote on in the big membership meeting that always happens at the end of March. What are you hearing about the brotherly shove play and what's being discussed there on that front?
Yeah, it's something they've looked at like a lot. Now I'll give you my own opinion. Like a year ago, I thought it was like a cheat code, right? Like, and I was like, and if you care about health and safety and you have the quarterback getting shoved into the line, does that really square with some of the other actions? But I don't know about you, Rich, but as I've seen team after team after team try it and fail, and this really seems to be just one team that's really, really good at it, that has a Hall of Fame center in Jason Kelce, a strong as an ox quarterback in Jalen Hurts, 2 guards who used to be centers, at least when they're healthy, in Dickerson and Juergens. I've sort of come around to the fact, like, I don't think you should change the rules because one team's really good at something. And I've gotten that sentiment here too, just talking to more people. It's, the more that this just becomes kind of an ego-specific thing, the more support there is for not changing the rule in the push play. And we'll see what happens. But, part of it, and I think this applies to the hip drop tackle thing too, is, well, how do you write the rule, And that can be a little tricky too. So, I think this would be the beginning of the conversation to put it on a timeline to talk more about it. Of course, when you get to the combine, the competition committee meets there, and then ultimately at the annual meeting in March.
And then the other news is Los Angeles getting Super Bowl 61. So that, I can't believe we're in the 60s now.
I know.
60 was already awarded to the Bay Area again in Santa Clara, but 61 goes to the so there's a lot of West Coast Super Bowls the last couple of years.
That's right. Yeah, that's like a lot of like, if you have like on your docket like morning radio on the East Coast, it's going to be kind of tough for a few years.
Well, that's why I got morning radio on the West Coast. Hello, we love it. We kind of dig it. It's a home Super Bowl for us. So just circling back one more time to the international series. What do you think is the end goal here? Like a full-on international series package where there's double-digit number of games in various locations around the world that a new television partner can bid on for an early window. So there's going to be an official partner of the NFL that has control of that first of 4 windows of football more often than not? Is that the goal here?
Yeah, I think that that's part of it, is that you would have a new television package that would be a morning package. Obviously, that wouldn't apply to Brazil, of course, because the time difference isn't there. But yeah, I mean, like with the European games, certainly, they had talked about going to China. This was, I think, before the Beijing Olympics. Like, I think it was the Patriots and Seahawks were going to go over there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at some point, Australia, China, like, does that come into the equation? And, one thing that they talked a lot about, and I can remember in 07 when they launched the international series, it was, a guy named Mark Waller, who was the league at the time and ran international for a while.
He's a Brit. He was a Brit. Yep.
Yeah. And one of his goals, like, there was this 15-year goal that they had to put a team full-time in London. And that was in 2007. And obviously we're past that time frame now. And, they really feel like the market, like the London market, is ready for a team, but the logistics aren't there. And it was interesting because, like, at one point a few years ago, I talked to them about this, and they had actually mentioned how they'd studied air travel and, like, our advances coming in air travel that are going to make this more feasible. And, I think they feel like they could make it work, like, static, right? Like, just as far as, like, making, like, it so teams can go over there and play over there and then come back. Like, there's a way to do it. The problem would be with, how do you, if you have your right guard get injured, how do you work out, 4 guards on a Tuesday, right? Like, how do you do that? Like, and then
Sure.
like, I mean, little things like that people don't think of, but would have to be a factor, like, so do you have like a US base in Atlanta, say, and you fly those guards into Atlanta and they fly in, and then the guy who gets signed, then he's on a plane to London. It's complicated, and then how about this, right? Like, so say Seattle plays the London team in the wild card round of the playoffs, and then the winner of that game plays a team on a bye in the next round. Is that fair? That somebody might be traveling 10 hours or 11 hours each way and then have to go and play a team that's rested the next week. So I think, like, as simplistic as it sounds, like, advances in air travel could dictate whether or not there's a team over there, but they've certainly had designs on putting teams outside of the US. And I don't think that the desire to do that is gone. I think it's just on hold because of the logistical problems that having a team over, somewhere in Europe would present.
Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show from the league meetings in Dallas. Let's hit on the subject matter that our friend Tom Curran of NBC Sports Boston threw out there, that according to people that he speaks to in the know, that once the Patriots lost to the Colts in the International Series finale in Germany, the Kraft family decided that was going to be the end of Belichick's reign in New England, and they're just playing things out until it's done at a more, I guess, appropriate time after the season. Mm-hmm. What do you make of this, Albert Breer?
Well, I mean, first of all, like, I take what Tom says to the bank. Like, he's very plugged in. I am, like, full disclosure, like, has been, like, sort of a mentor of mine. So, I would take everything that Tom says at face value. I would also say this, like, just as far as my own knowledge on this isn't a decision that Robert Kraft's going to make on Black Monday. Like, this isn't a decision that Robert and Jonathan Kraft are going to mull over in the days leading up to that season finale against the Jets at Gillette. Like, this is something that's been on their mind. And, like, this is something that's going to be a decision that's made over months, not weeks. And, it goes back to Robert's, old saying, which he uses this over and over and over again in a lot of different circumstances, is measure 9 times and cut once. He understands the gravity of the situation. He's also marked by 2 different things, here. And I think one is how the departure of Tom Brady went, where they didn't get any compensation and Brady goes and wins the Super Bowl somewhere else. And then 2, his own Hall of Fame candidacy. And the optics of how would it look if I'm the guy who got rid of both Brady and Belichick, and where does that leave me? And so I think that this is multi-layered. And I think what Kraft wants, and this is me talking, I think what Kraft wants is an elegant solution to this. He wants a conclusion that looks the right way and that honors Belichick the right way. And I think that's easy if Bill's going to retire. But if this isn't it for Bill, and Bill wants to go coach somewhere else, that's where it can get complicated and awkward. So I don't know for a fact that they've talked about this. It would sort of surprise me if Robert and Jonathan hadn't tried to broach it with Bill. it would surprise me if they didn't do that well ahead of time. Now, whether they've done it or not yet, I don't know. But it wouldn't really surprise me if those guys didn't, at some point well before that finale against the Jets, addressed it with Bill directly.
Well, there was a full bye week after their loss in Germany to the Colts, and it's a shocker. I'll shoot you straight up. I mean, we have heard about coaches losing a game overseas and then they get fired on the bye week after that, so it would kind of check a box that they did make that decision after an international game that they really wanted to win in Germany. But obviously, this is not just any coach. It's not just any organization. It's not just any situation, which is why I think it also checks out that they're not making this a rash decision on Sunday night after Week 18 against the Jets.
Right.
But it also would check boxes that Belichick would be given this heads up, and then he would have an opportunity to figure out what his next move is going to be too, right? I mean, that's
and I think one thing that I think gives the Kraft some flexibility here is I think they probably have the next guy in house, and so.
In Gerard Mayo, you're talking about.
Gerard Mayo, right.
Okay.
The linebackers coach who obviously was a great player there, first round pick. Now I can tell you personally, like I've worked with him before. He is A+ in every way, as a person, and you can see what they see in him. And, we talk a lot about the young offensive coach trend, right? Well, there's an ex-player trend that seems to be working out pretty well now too, with Dan Campbell and D'Amico Ryans and Mike Vrabel and Kevin O'Connell. And, Gerard would sort of be, I think in that category. And, like part of this is Gerard turned down an interview with the Panthers last year and got a new contract, and his contract dovetails with Belichick's. And so things logistically are set up where Gerard could easily be moved into that role, maybe with a new general manager coming in. And I think that does give you some flexibility if you're the Krafts, where you could sit there and say, we're not in any rush to launch a coaching search because we probably have our guy right here. Now, there are some things that they've got to do, per the Rooney Rule to satisfy certain things before they were to hire Gerard. But, I do think that there's that element of it where, you don't feel this rush to start a coaching search because you're competing against 7 or 8 other teams on the market. If you think you've got your guy in house, it allows you to kind of act with a little bit more patience and not have the same level of urgency that some other teams do. And that to me is another thing that makes this unique, on top of, how like Bill's last 4 years probably would get coaches fired somewhere, but you can't discount the 20 years that came before that, which is probably the greatest run a coach has ever had.
And then he just won a game that nobody expected him to win, and has been, honestly, and he's as dynamite as they come if he wants to do TV or anything like that. So there are many options here. Obviously, Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Before I move on, is Kraft there? I mean, is anyone, because Belichick had addressed it today and said, I'm focused on Kansas City. What did Kraft have to say?
Kraft, I would say, has made himself scarce at this meeting in the October meeting in New York, and that's not par for the course with him. At these meetings, he'll at least kind of walk through where the media is, and he won't duck the media. And especially like at like a day like today, like this, Robert's involved in the international stuff.
Big time.
You know what I mean? Like, so he would not. Like, I would think like he wouldn't mind actually coming and speaking to the media and explaining why they're going to Brazil and all of that different stuff. He would probably like to talk about that, but he knows if he comes out where that's going. You know what I mean? Like, so he's made himself scarce here. He made himself scarce in October. It's a little out of character for him. Not that he does a press conference at every owners meeting, but he generally will be at least available to chit chat or whatever. And he's been noticeably absent from the media areas over the last couple of owners meeting, I think for obvious reasons.
And then last one for you, Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Officiating, what's been the conversation there, certainly in light of the face of the league essentially calling out officiating, whether that was right or wrong, at the end of the Bills-Chiefs game. This has been at least something, and Mahomes talking about it like this.
Yeah.
Again, he's since said something otherwise about what he was saying after the game, but he is giving voice to what a lot of fans are saying about the officiating. So,
all right, well, let's separate the two. Can you give me 1 minute to go off on this? Because
Albert Breer, like the floor is yours, sir. Go for it.
But you saw that like that view. Like I think a fan shot it, right? Like the ground level view, right? Mm-hmm. Go back and watch that, right? And the ref pulls the flag right away and throws it. Okay, so for all the people that are like, they're taking away such a great play. What do you want the ref to do in that situation? Do you want them to like huddle up and say, you know what, he was offsides, but that was one heck of a play? Like, is that what we're looking for? Like, no. I mean, he threw the flag. You know what I mean? Like, the flag was on the ground. You're not going to pick it up because, like, that was a great play. So
he was probably going, oh my God, that was one of the most incredible plays. Well, wait till I buzzkill the rest of this stadium. that might have been it. You know, I mean, it might have been like, oh no, this is going to really create a problem for Sheffers. And I'm sure the official, knows that Sheffers is a 4-letter word in Kansas City already. You know, so that's a point well taken. Totally,
I mean, so yeah. In this specific situation, I think Andy and Patrick, their words afterwards reflected that. Like I think that after they had a cooling down, like they reflected that. I think Patrick, spoke with emotion after the game, and I think Andy was just taking up for his players. Like I think that was the long and short of it. And then they come back the next day and kind of amend what they said. Officiating is certainly a question that a lot of owners, a lot of the top executives here are talking about. I don't think it was specifically on the agenda, but it's something that is being addressed in the hallways and the meeting rooms and everywhere else here. And I do think, it's something that the coaches have really taken up as an issue. And I can remember 4 or 5 years ago talking to the people on the Madden committee, and Andy Reid's chaired the Madden committee forever, about the idea of adding a sky judge and having some level of oversight from above. So the officiating crews on the field can have the same benefit that all of us sitting at home on the couch have, which is like 12 or 13 different angles in a high definition of every single play. And so I think that discussion reopens more officially when the competition committee meets at the combine, and then going into the annual meeting in March. And I can promise you that it's not something that there's no whistling by the graveyard on this right now. Now, that doesn't mean there's going to be a significant change, but a lot of powerful people are talking about it.
Well, I mean, I think the change has got to come from the competition committee, from the coaches themselves. I really believe that, because, we had Dean Blandino here a couple weeks ago, right, guys, from Fox Sports, and former head of NFL refs, Dean Blandino, was here. He used a great analogy about how replay is not the complete fix here, saying that back in the day, you used to be able to back your car up out of your driveway, in a way, the old-fashioned way, looking over your shoulder. Now you're used to all the bells and whistles to beep if you're close to something, and you got this camera to help you go back there. And the officials are now sometimes relying on all of those bells and whistles to get the calls right, and they're just going to lay back and just let the replay come in and eventually and fix it, and not making the immediate calls, and then that actually becomes a problem. And so the answer to that could be as well, point. It was a great point. And so he said that analogy, but he also said, when it all comes down to it, viewership's through the roof. So a lot of owners might be like, okay, officiating, it might get me one day and it might get my opponent one day, but eventually it all comes down to it. The bottom line is fine. That's why it's got to be on the coaches to come and correct and fix this thing in a certain way. I don't know what it is to be done. I don't think it's to make them full-time, because Dean was explaining they are full-time during the season anyway. And I also would understand their retort would be, so we suck, right? You think we suck. Fans think we suck. And then we actually get a call right, and the face of the NFL is calling us out for getting the call right, because we shouldn't have called it. And they're probably like, what the hell? I mean,
I just think, so my opinion on this, Rich, is like, I think part of the problem is that we can see more, right? Like, I think it's a huge part of the problem is that we can see stuff that, because of, again, the quality of television, because of the amount of cameras, because of the pseudo journalists that are sitting in the stands with their phones, like, we can see so much more than we could 25 years ago. And that's put a real onus on the officials to get every single little thing right. And that's not fair either. I just think and this is a point that so many coaches have made to me, and they actually took their own straw poll a few years ago and trying to get a sky judge put in. I think it was 2019, and it was 32-0, right? And it why wouldn't we give that benefit to the officials? Why isn't there an official upstairs? And it wouldn't be up there to change the 55-45 calls. What it would be up there for is the 90-10 calls and buzz down. And you could say to the head referee, pick up the flag or drop the flag, or I saw that. And people say, well, that would slow down the game. No, it'll speed the game up because the play clock will govern everything. If it's obvious, you'll see it in the first 15 seconds. If it's not, you know what? Then you just play on and that's the flow of the game. And I don't know. I think that this is something that they really, again, need to look at and trying to find a way to use the technology more effectively. It's the same sort of thing as you still have two sticks and a chain, marking first downs when you could, it's sort of that,
Exactly.
So I just think the technology's there. They need to figure out a way to use it way more efficiently than they are right now. And I think those answers are out there if they just go and look for them. And that's all that the coaches really want.
Albert, thanks for the time. Greatly appreciate it. I think the wait staff is waiting for you to leave and be done with this interview.
Yeah.
So thanks for the time.
I don't know. I don't think you guys could see it, but there were a bunch of trays and everything else passing by.
Fantastic.
And so, food looks good. I might go have some.
Go for it, Albert. Thanks for the time. Yeah. Take care.
All right, thanks, Rich.
That's Albert Breer, ladies and gentlemen. The one and only. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.